Yeah, today we're going to talk about my own experience again. Um, if you have watched this video on Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, I think I labeled it like something like mirror twins, because they are so much alike. I mean, we have it here. They have both the sun and Leo. They have the moon both in Scorpio, Mercury both in Leo, and also the AC. Oh, it's not shown here in this list, which is weird. But you see, Ben has the AC, the rising sign in Cancer, and Jennifer Lopez, she's got it at 1 degree Leo, if you remember, which means it is basically still loaded with Cancer energy, because you just don't go from one sign to the other. There is an area, there is some time where you have mixed energy. And now it's not going from white to black. There's some gray in between where you have this tainted energy. And with 1 degree Leo, she must have Cancer energy as well. So there's a lot of this mirroring going on. And also when we were looking down here, no, it doesn't show the houses. Wait. Okay, I guess here we will see more. Sorry for that. That was not being prepared perfectly. The Virgo inside of me is a bit ashamed, but that's how it is. Okay, and here we do see the AC. See, it's a 1 degree Leo with Jennifer Lopez. And here we saw more mirroring, with both have the sun in each other's 2nd house, Venus in each other's 12th house, Saturn in the 11th, which is not as important as the personal planets. But yeah, we were talking about the mirroring going on, and I remember me saying that actually can go either way. It can help you understand each other very well, but of course it can be triggering if you do have some things that are just total opposites. And that is more what I want to talk about, actually, because a couple of days after I recorded this video, I remembered that I had a very similar connection. Even though those might be divine counterparts, okay, we don't know for sure, but I remember I analyzed the entire thing. It's probably like a week ago, so I don't have all the details in my head. But I said, yeah, they might be divine counterparts. My guy back then, not a divine counterpart. Definitely not. We were only 18 when we met, and so we were young, and you most likely would not meet a divine counterpart that early on. That does happen sometimes, that divine counterparts meet in childhood and then they separate, but it's not, of course, as tragic, because there's no love connection going on yet, and then they meet at an older age, and then this connection can really get started. This is not what happened for me. This guy was not a divine counterpart. You may call him a catalyst, but I wouldn't even go there. I would say that I have had 3 major catalysts in my life that brought me some kind of spiritual awakening. One I actually met because of that guy we're going to talk about now. It was a friend of his, and he was the soul twin. I mentioned him in other videos. He was the one that got me meditating and seeking answers. And then when I was 27-ish, 26, 27-ish, I met the split twin. And very funny, maybe I should do a video on that. It was very much connected to my nodes. The first guy when I met when I was 19, the one that I call a catalyst, was when my north nodes were in conjunct. Well, my natal north node and the transit north node were conjunct, and that is often when fate happens. And then I met the split twin flame when my north nodes and my natal north node and the solar south nodes were conjunct, and vice versa, of course. So that has a deep impact. My twin flame, we saw the second time we ever met was when his north nodes were conjunct, and I met him not exactly when my north nodes were conjunct, but in the same year, like 2 or 3 months before I had this perfect conjunction between my north nodes. So there was this north node connection going on, but I don't know why we're talking about this right now. This is not where I wanted to go. But anyway, that guy, I do have a sinister here, and you immediately see there's a lot going on. Why? Because that guy was only 1 day older than me. I'm born September 1st, and his birthday was August 31st, the same year. And as you can tell, I don't have his exact birth date. I do have his exact birth date, but not his birth time. So we don't have his houses. I don't think that he was a Gemini rising like me, because the energy was somewhat different. And I believe, I don't know, have his birth time. So this system would put it at 12 o'clock, which would put the moon over here in Aquarius. If he would have been born a lot earlier, let's say at 11 or 10 o'clock or earlier, then he would be a Capricorn moon. However, I knew this guy's energy, and I assume he was a like an Aquarius moon, just like me. However, something I have in my natal chart, you won't see it right here, but I do have a moon Pluto trine, which actually is a great aspect of me and my character, because usually moon and Aquarius people are the humanitarian kind, but they can be easily detached when it comes to emotions. I can do that too if I want, but I am very, very sensitive. I am very emotional, an empath, because of my moon Pluto trine. And I was born very early, on the 1st of September. I was born close to midnight, past 11. So we probably had a bit more than 24 hours apart. So there is no way that he could have been a moon Pluto trine as well, and he didn't have that aspect. So that was one major difference we had. But you see, pretty much everything is very close. I'm surprised that Venus is that far apart. Let's check that. 22 and 20 degrees. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, Venus, is very close to the sun, so it may travel 2 degrees in a day. However, yeah, Mercury as well. Mercury is 5 and 4 degrees. The sun is 9 and 7 degrees. Because I was born pretty late on the 1st. But you see, everything is conjunct. Pretty much everything. We do have pretty much everything in the same sign. I don't know about his houses because we don't have the rising sign, and again, I knew his energy, so I'm pretty sure he was moon in Aquarius. However, it would not be a major surprise if he would have been a moon in Capricorn as well, because out of the 6 guys I loved in my life, 3 were moon in Capricorn people, and my twin flame is a moon in Capricorn, and the 2 guys before him were moon in Capricorns as well. And you will see that that is something, if you do have a divine counterpart, especially like a like twin flame, you will get prepared for that connection. You will be prepared for that energy. And that is why and the moon is one of the most important, for me, the most important aspect in astrology. So you would get prepared for that, for your person's energy. So again, it would not have been surprising. However, I don't consider this guy a catalyst at all, because there was no great spiritual awakening. Yeah, he taught me some things. One thing he taught me was standing up for myself. He taught me basically to fight, not physically. We never fought physically, but I was very timid and calm before I met him, and he taught me to stand up for myself, basically. You could consider this, I don't like the word toxic too much, because not everything that's not working out you should consider as toxic. There may have been slight tendencies, yes. He would be the only guy in my life that if you would ask me if I ever liked a jerk, and that's the only guy I would say, yeah, once. All of the other guys I consider to be very nice. And why would I see him as a jerk when he's so much like me? The thing is, I met him again when I was 18, or maybe even 17, I don't exactly remember, 17, 18, and didn't believe in twin. He's not a twin flame, most definitely. I didn't believe in anything like that back then anyway, but still, I always thought he's like my twin, not twin flame again, but I was more thinking like a biological twin, you know, somebody who's very much like you. But I always thought it's like we have the same attributes, but I chose the light and he chose the dark. We would have the same good attributes and the same shadow attributes, but I always liked to live the nicer ones. I'm a kind person. I know I'm very blunt. I know I'm a blunt person when I'm teaching, but I'm usually a very, very nice, kind person, and he was not that so much. But again, like pretty much every quality I saw in myself, he had. But you get to choose. Do you want to live your lighter aspect, or do you want to live your darker aspects? And I always felt like he chose the dark, I chose the light. But however, there was so much mirroring going on that it did create chaos. And I remember one of his best friends once said to us, or he said to me, "You and him, it's never going to work out. You're too much alike. You are too much alike. You're both extremely blunt. You hit each other with words." And by that, I don't mean that we said mean words. We didn't like use foul words. There was no swearing, cursing at each other. There was nothing like that. But we were just extremely blunt, and sometimes we really triggered one another. And that is something that can happen if you are too much alike, because again, you won't just share the positive light attributes, you will share the shadow side as well. And in my video about divine counterparts, different kind of divine counterparts, I do mention mirror souls. I don't want to say mirror twin, because again, twin, it's such a big word, even though I said twin earlier when I described him. But again, I was thinking more like biological twins, or just two people who are too much alike and they butt heads. And definitely a soulmate, definitely, because again, he was a guy who was very important in my life, who triggered me, who taught me lessons. Not very harmonious. At times it was. I mean, there was feelings there. We were talking every day for a couple of years, or almost every day. There were even synchronicities or sameness, as in I went to live in the United States as an exchange student when I was 17, and he did the same. Basically, it's just that I went back home after 1 year and he stayed. We only met when he came home for summer break, then he went back home to Germany, and then he went back to the United States, which is one of the reasons why that could never really have worked out. There was great distance, and also again, we were really not always too kind to one another. So yeah, it can be quite triggering if you are too much alike. And as I mentioned, that's what I wanted to go in my video about mirror souls, is that they mirror back to you where you are. And when I was 17, 18, 19, I was of course not as far developed as I am today. I haven't done as much shadow work. I hadn't even started really doing my shadow work, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I did start. The year that I was away from home in the United States was very healing for me. That time away was very important to me, and I started healing back then. But I didn't actively overcome things. I didn't actively meditate and do my shadow work. So of course there was a lot of shadow and hurt and pain still inside me, and he came to trigger that. And if you would meet a mirror soul once you are older, more awakened, then of course that is what they will mirror back to you. I don't know how much he developed in his life, but he's no longer in my life, and I could only draw him back into my life if he would be a match to my frequency. If he's not a match to my frequency, he has no chance being in my life, and he's not in my life. And quite frankly, I don't even care about having him in my life ever again, to be honest. I have forgiven him, and that is one of the major lessons he taught me. A couple of years later, when I thought about him, I was still mad and upset and really, really mad. And one day I thought about him, and then I was like, wait, well, when I'm mad at him, he doesn't even know this. We haven't spoken in years. He won't even know that I'm mad at him. I'm harming myself when I'm mad at this guy. And that is when I realized that we forgive for ourselves and not for the other person. And that is when I forgave him for everything that happened. And again, there was nothing like abusive going on. It was just triggering and mirroring, which when you're not awakened yet, you of course blame the other person for treating you that way. The more you are awakened, of course you don't blame others. You realize that they are just your mirror. So if you attract a mirror, then they always, kind of everybody is a mirror, okay? Everyone is mirroring you something. When I'm talking about a mirror soul, then they would be a lot like you. They would greatly remind you of yourself, and you would find attributes you have in the other person to a great extent. Not just a little bit, but really to a great extent. I mean, this is of course, you see, a bit chaotic. There's so much sameness here. We don't have as much sameness going on between Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, but that's not surprising because he was born in 72 and she was born in 69. So it is even more surprising that they do have the most aspects in common. It is of course not surprising at all if you are just one day apart that you do have everything pretty much in the same order or in the same placement. But so a mirror soul, it does not have to be. And again, when I'm talking mirror soul, I am talking about a soulmate. Someone you attract into your life can be a divine counterpart, does not have to be a divine counterpart. That kind of depends on how far you are developed. If you have done your work, if you're healed, or if you're using this connection to do your work, then this person can definitely be your divine counterpart. I mean, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, they are now in their second round, right? So just because they didn't get it right the first time doesn't mean that they may not get it right now. I have no idea. I mean, it's up to them. No matter what connection you have, you always have to do the best, make the best out of it, right? But again, a mirror soul would not have to be that extreme. One example for, of course, would be, let's check someone who's not that much alike. I'm going to do a video on Tom Cowlitz and Heidi Klum, but let's just see that to see if there's anything we would find. No, not so much. Okay, this doesn't really help. So a mirror soul could be somebody who is mirroring an aspect to you, and that could also be, for example, I'm a moon in Aquarius and a Virgo sun, and I personally feel like I have stronger tapped into my Aquarius energy than in my Virgo energy, especially since I always also have midheaven in Aquarius, and I personally believe the moon is more important. It is stronger even than the sun is. But let's say I do have Venus in Leo. Let's just say I learned, or due to my development, for some reason I tapped more into my Venus energy, my Leo energy, and I vibrate a lot with Leo energy. And then when I would attract somebody who has strong Leo, then they would be a mirror as well, because they would mirror that Leo energy that I'm strongly tapped in at that moment. They would strongly mirror that back to me. Or let's say if I had some squares, can I open this here? No, unfortunately. Wait. No. I was thinking about just opening mine, but that's okay. What did I want to say? Okay, let's say I do have a square. Or, yes, squares would be good. Where do I have a square? Let me think about my squares. I do have a sun rising sign square, I believe. So if this square energy would be active, or any other square, and I would attract a mirror, then of course they would mirror something else to me. Then when later I have overcome that square, and I was always talking about you can turn a square into a trine, and I did a video on that. I don't know if I'm going to release that before I release this one, but I do have a video on that. Squares are some kind of a karma that you can learn to overcome, and once you change that energy about yourself, you will attract someone else. But for example, if I would be more tapped into my Virgo energy and I had strong Virgo, then I would attract a mirror that would mirror that strong Virgo back to me. If it's still conflicted Virgo, because the sun would have a lot of squares, then that would be reflected back to me. But if I have healed those squares, then I could attract somebody who is mirroring that strong Virgo back to me. So again, a mirror soul does not have to have everything the same like they do, like we do, or like those two do, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. A mirror soul will mirror back to you whichever energy is the one you are tapped in and you've learned to tap in. But again, we're not talking always about like there's some kind of fluctuation. If you constantly change, then you would keep attracting different people. But at a certain age, you have like a set energy that of course can still change, but it's not changing like constantly all the time, because you have realized more about yourself. And again, your mirror would have some kind of energy. And that's why I said in that video, I believe that you cannot always define a mirror soul, because they're not always like everything the same, but if it is, then you could talk about a mirror like I did about Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck. There's definitely strong mirroring energy going on, and in this guy's case, there's strong mirroring energy going on. But again, a mirror soul does not have to be this extreme. This is really an extreme case, but every person you meet that was born on your same birth date or the day before, the day after, there would be a lot of sameness going on, and so you would have a very similar character most likely. If you have met somebody who was born on your birthday but they are still a lot different, then probably because they have a different rising sign, which means the sun, for example, would be in a complete different house, and that of course could mean that they are somewhat different. But then if you would get to know them better, you would see that there is a lot of likeness underneath. But think about biological twins. One might be the more extroverted, one might be the more introverted, but still, even though they have their differences, there's probably a lot of sameness still when it comes to the frequency. At least some decides they want to be completely different, and that can be a thing too. For example, like let's take this. I like my Aquarius energy, but you could have one twin that is tapping more into the Aquarius energy, and another one might like the Virgo energy better and has stronger Virgo aspect, or it's because whatever we focus on is getting bigger, and we do manifest. Remember, whatever you focus on, and if somebody really focuses on those typical Virgo energies and qualities, and the other twin would focus less on these qualities but more on others, then of course they would strengthen different areas or aspects in their character, and hence they can be different and more individual if they choose to tap into different energies. That is absolutely possible, and you can do that too if you check out your birth chart and you say, I don't know, you're something you don't like, then just tap more into another energy. For example, Virgo, I always thought, I would die if I would be a secretary, and actually learn to be a secretary. That's the thing. When I was younger, I was more tapped into the Virgo energy, and I learned to be a bilingual secretary. I had 2 years of training, And every time I went to that job, I had to vomit every morning because I hated it so much. But then I tapped more into Aquarius. I mean, Aquarius midheaven clearly would die in an office, or Uranus in the 6th house would die in an office. So that energy just grew stronger. So of course a mirror does not have to be exactly the same, but one of your major aspects, components, will get mirrored back to you. And that of course can look very different in astrology. Of course, that is something that can look very, very different. For example, my best friend and I, she's a Sagittarius, because look, I'm a Gemini rising, which means I am a Sagittarius descendant, and I would attract Sagittarius people. And she's a Leo rising, which means her descendant is in Aquarius, and I do have strong Aquarius energy, so naturally we would attract one another. I'm a Virgo sun and she's a Virgo moon, and so Virgo sun and Virgo moon energy still is really, really different, but there is the same component. And maybe you have heard about the 16 personality test, and I am a mediator, the INFP. And she did that test as well, and she's also an INFP. So even though we do have a lot of differences, she has a different rising sign, she's got a different sun sign, of course. Her moon sign is my sun sign, but still there's a lot of mirroring going on. And it's maybe because we do share this strong Virgo bond, even though it's not my strongest, but we do get each other. Well, I love her to death, and she loves me too, which is... I'm glad to have her as my friend, and her sister too. Her sister's my other best friend, and she's an INFJ, so she's also very, very similar to us. And again, she's also completely different when it comes to her chart. But there's still some energies, and when I mean chart, I mean like the rising sun and moon sign. But there is still an energy that would connect us, that would get mirrored to us. Okay, I'm rambling. That's because sometimes I just press record and I don't have an exact plan. I just have a concept in my mind that I want to talk about. But all I want to say is somebody who is a lot like you or mirroring something back to you does not have to be like this, where everything is the same. But if there is so much the same like here, if you're ascended, that would be maybe good, because you would really understand one another. However, it could be really boring, because there's maybe not as much growth, because you're so much the same. There's not as much mirroring going on to develop once you have cleared your shadows. But when you still are in your shadow phase, then that can be hell. I mean, yeah, hell is a big word. Again, it was nothing like abusive, so there is way, way, way worse. But still, it was not very easy, and it was painful. But there were good times too, of course. I would not have been in that connection for so long if it wouldn't have had its good moments too. Anyway, that was it. That was more of my personal experience when it comes to somebody who is like a mirror soul. And again, labels, I know I just like to use labels because it makes it easier to talk about energies, because energies are so hard to put in words. And when you have like a word that makes some sense, and then when we talk about it, then we know that when we use that specific label, we're talking about the same thing. That is why I do like labels, but in the end, it doesn't matter. When I knew him back then, I didn't care what it was called. There was this connection. I liked him sometimes, and sometimes not. Yeah, look, we got this Mars connection too, so sexual attraction was there as well, of course. So labels are not important when you live a connection. They can be important to decipher, like to rule out if it's not a twin flame, then you don't have to be stuck to it, you know. I always say a true twin flame, there's nothing toxic going on. A twin flame would not abuse you in any way. And that is something that I think is very, very important, because when I read in forums or on Facebook sites, there's so many people talking about toxic relationship and call the other person my twin, and I'm just thinking like, oh my god, that's not a divine counterpart connection. Like, again, this was not a divine counterpart. It was somebody who, I believe it was fate that we met, because he was a good teacher. He was a good teacher. And I'm not mad at him anymore. I'm thankful that he taught me things. I also am thankful that he was the reason why I met my first big catalyst. So again, there's no bad blood here. But yeah, my experiences with somebody who's so much alike, again, it can be tough. In case you're wondering why there has been this time jump, I was already in bed, but then I kept thinking about this video, and I had the urge to put some knowledge out and to give some more additional information that came into my mind while I was lying in bed, and I knew that it wouldn't let me sleep, so I decided to just get up and get it over with, so that hopefully I can sleep afterwards. Yeah, what I would like to add is talking about the conjunctions again. Having everything conjunct is not a good thing. We're already talking about that. Typically, when you learn about astrology, one of the first things you would learn is that conjunctions are good, oppositions are bad, trines are the best, squares not so much. However, oppositions as well as conjunctions can be a bit of a double-edged sword. Sometimes it is good to have some oppositions, because then you have balancing energies. I've said it in other videos. It is when you have oppositions, you need to have some sameness in your horoscope to balance out those differences. But to have some differences can be a good thing, because when there's differences, you can learn from each other. You can maybe adapt some things, or you can complement each other. Yeah, twin flames, they don't complement each other as much when it comes to oppositions. They complement each other because they are complementary signs. You know the drill. It would be Cancer and Leo, the moon and sun sign, and we do have the Mercury signs, Gemini and Virgo. Then we have the Venus signs, which are complementary, which is Taurus and Libra. The Mars signs, Aries and Scorpio. The Jupiter signs are Pisces and Sagittarius. And then we got the Saturn signs, Aquarius and Capricorn, that form counterpart energy. But anyway, when we learn about astrology, we often learn, conjunctions are a good thing. But the problem is, if there's too many conjunctions, you're too much the same, which means there is not really room for growth. Because how do you learn from one another if you are so much the same? So those relationships can be perfect for mirroring to you, to bring something that is in your subconscious into the conscious, to kind of like reassess your own values, to learn who am I by seeing it in another person. And that can give you some growth if you are still, especially if you do have a lot of shadows. If you already are healed, it can be very harmonious. However, it is not like if it's this extreme, when we're talking about Affleck, it is not as extreme as in my case, and they do have some differences. We do see it here. Not all of the planets are the same, and there are some differences. However, if it is, so they can complement each other. And basically, don't fret with whatever you have with your person. You can learn from it anyway if you do the work. As I always say, that you can manifest. But the problem is, if everything is conjunct, you're too much alike, and that can make it hard to actually grow with the other person. this can be, relationships like this can be relationships, once you have dealt with your own inner demons, that are like brother and sister, living their life, having like a good friend relationship, even if it's a romantic relationship. However, again, it is not one that would stand for a lot of spiritual growth because of that sameness. That is why twin flames, they have this counterpart energy that is bringing something else to the table. Both share, for example, if they're Gemini and Virgo, they do share the Mercury energy. They share that kind of thinking, mental energy. However, it's the yin and the yang. We do have Gemini as the yang, the masculine aspect of Mercury, and Virgo as the feminine aspect. And we do have that with all of these counterpart signs. Then, of course, there's others who have the oppositions, and that can be okay as well. It's also kind of depends on what signs, what houses, how evolved is that soul, basically you, because again, you can only attract somebody who is on your level. You cannot attract somebody who is completely off your energy. That's just not possible. And by the way, I did record a video on that. I don't know if it will be uploaded by the time you're watching this. It should be, but I do have a video called why your twin flame is not behind you, or why you're not ahead of your twin flame in your development. Then again, when you learn about astrology, you learn that trines are amazing and the most harmonious aspect. Why? Because like I'm a Virgo sun, which means a trine would usually be in a Taurus or a Capricorn. Of course, if you would be on the cusp, let's say you're very early here, then a trine could be between Taurus and Aries, for example. So it does not necessarily have to be Taurus, but most likely it would be Taurus, and that would be the more harmonious. Why is it so harmonious? Because the earth sign share the same element, the water signs share one element, the fire signs share one element, and the air signs, did I forget one? Well, you get the drift. It's a bit late. But they share the element, however, they bring something else in addition to it. Even though a Taurus is an earth sign just like a Virgo is, or a Capricorn is an earth sign just like a Virgo is, they're still not Virgo energy. There is some sameness, however there is some difference, but it is different as the counterpart energy, for example, because again, Virgo and Gemini share this mercurial energy, whereas Taurus would be Venus. So we do have Mercury and Venus, and then Capricorn would be Saturn. So they're completely different, ruled by completely different planets, even though it's Earth. So this connection would combine Mercury and Venus. So they both can profit from it. This connection would combine Mercury and Saturn, so both can bring something else to the table. And then here we got Venus and Saturn as well. And that could be something that's amazing. And you know, if you have watched my videos, I do love Venus-Saturn connections, because that is, stability, and that is what we crave when we want a committed relationship, right? Saturn is the planet of commitment, and of course that would go with any of the signs, with the air signs, with Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. We got the fire signs, Leo, Sagittarius, and Aries, and then we got the water signs with Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio. They share the same element, but again, they bring something else to the table, and that can be very, very, very harmonious. So you would, it's amazing if you do have a lot of trines. And high level soul connections would have a lot of trines. For example, my twin flame and I am a moon in Aquarius, and he's a Gemini sun. So we have one sun and moon trine, and I'm a Virgo sun. He is the Capricorn moon. So we do have actually two sun and moon trines. And by trines, I don't mean just that we share the element, but it's actually trines, meaning the orb is less than 10 degrees. It's actually way closer than 10 degrees. And then, of course, there's the squares. When you study astrology, you will learn squares are the harshest aspect. And it kind of can be in the beginning. They can be all the way through if you don't develop. But a square, you could say, is kind of like karma. But karma is not no punishment. It's nothing bad. Karma just shows you something that is unhealed within yourself, and that can be triggering, and it does not feel good. However, it is a lesson. It is the opportunity to grow. And I did record a video that is called something like how to turn a square into a trine. So you can overcome that energy. You can learn that lesson, and then you can have a harmonious relationship even if you have squares with your person. And then, of course, again, it's important what kind of a square it is, what kind of signs and houses. I did a video, exactly the one I was just talking about, how to turn a square into a trine, and I used the example of Heidi Klum and her husband Tom Kaulitz. They have a lot of Virgo Gemini squares. Sorry, they have a lot of squares. But this square is not as bad because they share the Mercury energy. So they already have something in common, mercurial energy, that can help them overcome that square. And we do have the same with Sagittarius and Pisces. Those signs also would form squares. However, they're both the Jupiter signs, which means it is easier for them to overcome that kind of energy. And the same would, of course, be with squares between the 3rd and the 6th house, because then again it would be the Gemini and the Virgo house, and the 9th and the 12th, because then again it would be the Pisces and the Sagittarius energy. However, you can overcome any square if you do the work. If everything is full of squares, that would more say it's a karmic relationship that in theory you can make work if you learn your manifestation. It would just be a lot more work because there's a lot of things to overcome, and some squares are easier. However, again, it's just because there's a lot of conjunctions, it does not necessarily mean that something is super harmonious, because again, a conjunction can be a double-edged sword. It can strengthen the great abilities, but it can also strengthen the shadow aspects, and that can be quite painful, to be honest. And in that case, if you have shadow aspect, I'm not saying an opposition would be better than, it could be even worse, but it also could be better. So that's what I said. Conjunctions and oppositions are a bit of double-edged swords. It depends on how developed you are. It depends on houses. It depends on, for example, I was saying this in some video, I forgot which one. I don't get Pisces energy. So this is an opposition that would not work. Except for if that Pisces person would have a lot of Virgo energy or Aquarius energy or some kind of energy that I have strong, or I would have strong Pisces energy, then that is something that could work. Otherwise, it would just be too opposite, So again, those just because it's conjunctions doesn't mean it's a jackpot. Trines would be better, to be honest. Trines would be better. Trines are the most harmonious because they get each other, Earth signs get each other, water signs get each other, and so on. And then, of course, the highest would be like the ones that share the same planet, except for Sun and Moon. They are a couple because there's only one Sun sign, Leo. There's only one Moon sign, Cancer. So they are counterparts as well. Pisces, I don't know why I say Pisces. The Moon is the feminine energy, of course, and the Sun is masculine energy. And then we do have the same going on. We have the Yang and the Yin. We have the Yang and the Yin. We have the Yang and the Yin. We have the Yang and the Yin and the Yang and the Yin. And we got the counterparts here. and that those of course are very, very harmonious, unless of course you do have a lot of other damaging stuff. For example, again, my twin flame and I, we are Virgo and Gemini suns, but we don't have a square. It is squaring energy, yeah, but we don't have a square when it comes to our sun signs, nor when it comes to our moon signs. Instead, as I said, we do have why did I say moon signs? Moon signs would be, yeah, the Virgo, no, sorry, Capricorn, and I don't know, sorry, it's kind of late, it's a bit hard to concentrate, but still I needed to get this done. However, if there would have been squares, then it's okay, they can be overcome, any square can be overcome, but especially when you share the energy of a planet. So yeah, don't worry if you look at you and your person's horoscope, synastry, and you don't have a lot of conjunctions. That is not too bad. If you have more oppositions, again, it's not too bad. Just look, you need some similar energy. Squares, not so good, but again, their lessons can be overcome if you do the work. Trines are amazing, but overall you have to analyze the entire thing, of course. But again, don't worry if you don't have too many conjunctions, because that does not have to be a good thing. Again, it also we can look at the astrology, and as I said, this could be very harmonious or very damaging. Just by looking at it, it would be hard to say what it is. And again, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, they do have similar energy, and first it didn't make it work, and now they're trying again. So it does not determine whether it is a lifelong relationship or not. It kind of depends on when you meet, what state in your development you are, and that determines whether or not you can turn this into a lifelong relationship. I mean, honestly, if I would meet this guy now and he would be at the same level than me, if he would have developed as well, that could be a divine counterpart. I mean, he's not in this life because that's not what it's meant to be. I have my twin flame, but in theory, it could have been because of that sameness. Definitely could have been, but again, was not meant in this life, and that is completely okay, completely fine. But again, don't worry if you now think, oh God, we have so many conjunctions. Again, it is okay. It is what you make out of it. This is basically like a program, something you are programmed with, but you can override some codes, and you can develop, you can grow, and make it work. So again, that was the addition. I hope when I go to bed now that there won't be more ideas. I hope I can sleep now, and it's past 4 a.m. I'm awful, I'm such an owl, but this is too late. It's honestly too late. Anyway, I hope this gave you some more information, some additional informations about squares, trines, oppositions, conjunctions. Everything can be good, everything can be, I mean, even trines. If you have everything trines, a super harmonious relationship, that would be that kind of soulmate you meet and everything is just peachy and there's no triggering going on. And again, that could be one of those relationships where you live like brother and sister. There's not a lot of soul growth. It would be good if you don't want to ascend. Then it would be great, because then you would have a stable life. It could be a bit boring, to be honest, if you don't have any friction. If everything is too harmonious and there is no really growth going on, those are connections that can turn boring. Don't have to. Again, you get to develop that, you get to work on it. But even that can be a negative thing if you're just too, I don't want to say too comfortable, because that's like the best thing if you can be 100% comfortable with your partner, right? But if everything is too harmonious. That could, for example, mean you don't have an interesting sex life. You are very set in your ways, in your structure. There is no new things going on. So these connections are when your soul chose to come here, and it's in your blueprint to have this very peaceful connection, which again, it can be amazing. It can be absolutely, absolutely amazing. It just would not be a connection for a major ascension or soul growth. But not everybody is on that journey, and that's completely fine. And if you have a lot of squares, then you do have a lot of shadows. When you attracted someone that you have a lot of squares, there's a lot of cleaning up to do. Because if you would have been cleaned up, you would not have attracted one that you have so many squares with. Twin flames, they do have some squares, definitely, because they do ascend, but they have even more harmonious aspects. So it's a mixture, but the harmonious stuff is stronger. But there is some lessons to be learned, of course. So what's very bad when you're looking for soul connections is if you don't have a lot of connections between planets. And when I'm talking about connection, I mean especially the strong ones, the what are they called? I know that word. There's a specific word. Hard aspects, exactly. Hard aspects. Hard aspects again would be the conjunction, the opposition, the square, and the trine. There is other connections as well. For example, the sextile. You don't hear me talking about them as much. Doesn't mean that they're not important at all, but a lot of soulmates, any kind of soul connection will have a lot of aspects between personal planets. That's important as well. It's the personal planets. It's not as important if, I don't know, your sun is connected to all of the generational planet, because then everybody in that generation you would be connected with, and that doesn't tell us too much. So we are looking for connections between personal planets. Personal planets would be sun, moon. The rising sign is not a planet, but it's still part of it. Venus, Mercury, and Mars. That's where you want to have those connections. And in soul connections, of course, the nodes are important as well. And in those connections that are not just about living your happily ever relaxed after, the trine connections, but those that wanted to have a soul growth, Pluto would be important as well. That is because Pluto is the planet of transformation. So you need to check for Pluto connections as well in high soul connections. And of course Saturn is important because that's the seriousness that tells you how likely it is. I mean, again, I'm saying how likely you can change timelines, you can manifest, but it tells you how likely it is to ground this connection. That is why I personally think those are even more important than Neptune. You will find definitely in high soul connection, you definitely have Neptune connections. You will have either like 12th house stuff, or you will have a personal planet connected to Neptune in a harmonious way, conjunctions, trines, maybe sextile. But Neptune is a bit tricky because Neptune is also the planet of illusion. So you don't want to have maybe too many Neptune connections and no Saturn, because Saturn is the real life. And if you have a lot of Neptune connections, that would rather tell you that it could be illusional. If you do have Saturn connections as well, then that would hint at it is something that can be grounded. It's not just in your head. So there's the little danger that when it comes to Neptune. But of course, high soul connections, they do have 12th house stuff, and they have Neptune stuff as well. I just don't focus on it too much because I'm scared that many people then just go looking for Neptune. They say, oh, there's Neptune, and they disregard the Plutonic aspects. But again, Pluto is a double-edged sword as well. Pluto can be karma and Pluto can be transformation. Pluto is black or white. It can bring you to the highest heights, or it could mean staying in darkness if you don't do the work. So You don't want Pluto square connections too much. That can be toxic. With Pluto, you want more the trines, or even the conjunctions can be tricky, but they can be good. It depends on if there's anything else connected to Pluto or to your planet that is connected to Pluto. If there's like squares, then again, double-edged swords. No, not a double-edged sword. That's the not so good version of it. But yeah, you see here, of course, everything is conjunct. And Neptune connection, that doesn't tell you much at all. That just means that you were born within the same couple of years, because Neptune is very slow. So disregard Neptune connections, or Neptune Uranus. When we're talking Neptune connections, then we are definitely talking a connection between Neptune and a personal planet, and the same goes for Saturn connections or Plutonic connections. Okay, disregard the connections to the generational planets. That really doesn't tell much. Also, 12th house stuff, it should be the personal planets, okay, and not so much the generational planets. Again, that does not show you much, because then a good portion of humankind would have that connection to you, because again, those are very, very, very slow planets, and they stay in a sign for years. So that really doesn't matter much. Anyway, I hope I can get to sleep. Oh my god, I just rambled so much. I'm sorry. It's when you're a medium, there is another idea coming in, and then another idea, and Spirit has you go blah 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 blah. Okay, back to the main video. Bye bye. Or hello.